And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans, to this exciting pre-Halloween extravaganza. When I am so thrilled, honored, and delighted to welcome back my favorite duo, Lee Child and Andrew Child. They are double the trouble and triple the fun. They'll give us the inside scoop on their latest Jack Reacher book, number 28 in the series, The Secret. Andrew and Lee, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Welcome back.
Well, Sarah, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. We really appreciate you having us on the show tonight, and it's something we've been looking forward to for a long time. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, Andrew, I'm so honored to host you for the third year in a row. Lee, as our audience may be able to see, is frozen, but frozen in a flattering position, which is something that never happens to me or apparently Andrew. So we're going to wait for him to sort out all of the technical issues. And meanwhile, while he is rendered incommunicado, Andrew is going to spill all of his secrets about the secret. So Andrew, let's dive in. Tell our audience about number 28 in the series, all the secrets about the secret.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this book was such fun to write. Lee and I just had a blast with it. So I really hope that you guys are going to enjoy it just as much as we did. And it's the first thing to say about it is that this one is a prequel. So it goes back into when Jack Reacher was still in the army. So it goes back to 1992 for the main part of the action, with certain things happening back in 1969. So what we do is we see a version of Reacher, and we see him when he is still effectively a professional investigator. So question is, what is he investigating? And the answer is a series of bizarre, well, shall we say, deaths, unexpected, potentially accidental deaths in different places around the United States. One of these catches the eye of the Secretary of Defense, and he is so concerned about it, so concerned to make sure that no one finds the secret, that he convenes a special task force with people from different agencies to dig into what's happening. Reacher is the Army's representative, and he's tasked with getting to the bottom of what is going on. But of course, there's a suspicion that maybe the powers that be actually don't want the secret to be revealed and would rather have a situation where someone is to blame rather than someone gets the credit for figuring it out. So yeah, Reacher he finds himself in a few awkward positions during the course of this book. On the one hand, making sure he doesn't get jammed up, but at the same time, making sure that he gets to the bottom of who is doing what and why, and brings the guilty ones to justice.
Ooh, well, just like that. Andrew Child, you hooked us so good for Jack Reacher at number 28, and we cannot wait to get into every delicious detail. So while we are waiting for Lee to log back on, I just want to welcome everyone. We are broadcasting live to 7 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So hey, mystery and thriller loving friends, no matter where you're watching from, this is the place. You're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder. We're going to make them a little less painful for you. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new friends, we're so happy to have you. Welcome. And here's the drill. You can ask these two incredible authors anything you want about Jack Reacher, their writing process. Has it ever culminated into a wrestling match over word choice? I need to know, and I know you do too. We're going to get into every delicious detail. Let's jump into the comments. John, welcome to the conversation, joining us from Northeast Ohio. So good to have you. Daniel says, I am here for it. I haven't read it yet, but I will get there. Catherine joining us from Northern Wisconsin. Hi, Catherine. Such a pleasure to see your name pop up. Melissa joining us from Australia, saying hello, Sarah, Lee, and Andrew. Melissa from Australia here. Daniel says, Andrew, so this is like The Enemy. I'm currently reading that one.
Yeah, it's like The Enemy in the sense that Reacher's back in the army, and he is set to investigate some bad goings on. But I guess the difference with The Enemy is, well, first, for a start, Reacher's still a major in The Enemy. He's in a command more of a command position, and he's in charge of the investigation. What we have in the secret pretty much follows the enemy kind of chronologically, not in the series of the books, but in terms of Reacher's career. So Reacher at this point has been bumped back down to captain. And as the newest member of his unit, he's given the jobs that other people don't want, including being allocated to this task force. So rather than working alone and being in charge, Reacher is part of a team and is supposed to be collaborating with these guys from other agencies.
Ooh, well, I can't wait to hear more about that. Daniel, thank you for the great question. Lee, welcome back to the stage. We're so happy. I'm going to put you up here next to your brother. I'm going to put myself down here. It looks like you got your internet straightened out. We're so excited.
I hope I have. I went to a different room, so I hope this one is kind of. I know nothing about how the internet works. I know that we have this thing called a router, and it's wireless, and I'm now nearer to it. So, is this working?
This is working. This
awesome.
is working.
All right.
And I think, some mysteries just can't be solved, unlike within the pages of a Reacher book. So we're just jumping into the comments. Robin joining us. Hi, Robin. Welcome to the conversation. Erin is joining us from Facebook saying she is reading this now and loving it. She thanks you both for doing this event. We're so happy to have you guys here. Leach is joining us from Texas. Hi, Leacha. Welcome. Randy says, hi, Sarah Lee. And Andrew, thank you for being here with us tonight. We're so excited to have you here, Randy. Robin is watching from Idaho. So we have a truly international, from Australia to Idaho audience. Now I want to get into some of the incredible praise that this book has earned. So Janet Maslin from the New York Times says that the truth about Reacher just gets better and better. This series is utterly addictive. So clearly you guys know some things about writing addictive books. What is the secret to writing an addictive book that then makes the New York Times rave? Tell us, spill the tea.
Okay, I'm worried that Lee is frozen again.
Well, once again, he's frozen in an attractive position. Life is just not fair. So Andrew, you spill the tea and we'll gaze at Lee's thoughtful pose.
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question because, if only we could sort of bottle that and everybody would be happy. I mean, I think, he's gone. I think that really it's something instinctive. All writers are first and foremost readers. We have all spent decades reading just anything we can get our hands on, and as a result of that, you really get a kind of instinctive sense of what drives a book forward. And so what we try to do is just really raise questions, try to draw really intriguing scenarios, anything, because I think that the human mind is really programmed to always want to seek the answer to questions. So we ask as many questions as we can, and we answer them during the course of the book, and we hope that people are going to be moved to keep turning those pages to get to the answers to those questions.
Well, clearly, Andrew, it is working because, oh my God, I mean, you guys just keep turning out one #1 New York Times bestselling book, internationally bestselling book after another, now up to 28. Lee, what do you think is the secret to writing utterly addictive books, as the New York Times says?
Well, I really only write for one person, and that's myself. And if it interests me, then
Uh-oh.
I guess I think what he was going to say was if he can, what he's trying to say is he avoids chasing any trends or jumping on any bandwagons, just focuses on writing a book that he likes, because you can't afford to spread your aim too wide, because otherwise you don't hit anything. Write a book that you have absolute and utter faith in, that you believe in to the maximum, and then just trust to luck that if it appeals,
my secret,
if it appeals to you, that it will appeal to other people as well, and with any luck, a lot of other people. And so uh, by really keeping that sharp focus on not trying to chase trends or jump on bandwagons, you come up with something which is sort of tight and authentic and will grab people's attention.
I love that. Andrew, do you write for yourself as well?
Well, I hadn't really ever thought of it that way, but I certainly do deliberately avoid worrying about whether something is current or trendy or popular, or worrying about what other kinds of books are trying to sell. For me, it's really more back to that old expression, you write what you like to read. I love reading thrillers. I love reading, all kinds of things, police procedurals, all of those kind of books. I know what I like. And so when it's time to write, and with Reacher gives you a pretty broad canvas to explore, because he doesn't, for a start, have to be stuck in any one particular place. He can go anywhere, normally within the United States, but he has been to Britain, he has been to France, so he can go anywhere, and he can get involved in anything. It can be something that he is formally assigned to, like we see in The Secret while he was still in the army, or The Enemy, as was mentioned before. Or it can be something which he just strays across as part of his roaming about. And so, you've got a huge potential canvas. And I think the key is to fill it with things that you personally find interesting, rather than saying, oh, X, Y, and Z kind of book is popular this year. Let's write one of those. That is terrible. You're going to please no one if you do that, not even yourself. So we always set out to say, what kind of a book do we want to write this year? What would we want to read this year? And we just follow our own instincts.
I love that. I love that. So since you write what kind of books you like to read, what made you want to write a prequel this time? Was that a discussion? Did you both just say yes and seize upon it? Tell us the secret of how you got there.
That's a great question. Why go with a prequel? Just before I jump into that, though, I just did get a text from Lee saying that he's not able to log back in. He's been trying, and for some reason the internet has let him down. So he's not going to be able to rejoin tonight. So I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We're happy with one child.
Only one, exactly.
Child.
So yeah, I'll be an only child tonight.
Oh my God, an only child! Something that baby Andrew has never gotten the pleasure of having.
Exactly. Well, I always used to say, given the the age of my brothers, I always used to say I really felt like an only child, but one that had 5 parents. So.
Oh my God, 5 parents. Meanwhile, Lee enjoyed 15 years of solitude.
Well, yeah, he had it easy. That's what I always claim.
Let me tell you something. The oldest kid never has it easy. I know, because I was the oldest kid. That's what the baby thinks.
I was guessing there, Sarah, that you might have been the oldest. Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Yeah, well, just because of how you thought that.
Because I'm taking his side.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Tell us about the prequel. How'd you get there?
Yeah, so the prequel, what we did was, when we were talking about what this book was going to be, there were a couple of reasons really which steered us in this direction. One of them is that as I think we mentioned last year, Lee and I were embarking on this process where we were working together. We knew it was going to be at least 4 books, so we set out to do that, and I wanted to sort of explore the various different kinds of Reacher books, So Better Off Dead, for example, was first person. The other ones have been third person. We've done small towns. We've done some with larger places. And so I was interested in the idea of a prequel, since we hadn't done one of those together. So that was bubbling in the back of my mind. But the main reason is that whenever we get the chance to talk to readers, at conferences and book launches and things like that. That was tough for the first couple of books we did together because COVID had hit and all of the in-person events had been cancelled. So we hadn't really been able to get out there and talk to people so much. So when we were able to do that again, when I saw a similar thing in the comments flash up there a moment ago, a lot of people said to us that they really like the prequels. They really like the view that you have of Jack when he's back in the army. You see a different side of him, the younger, slightly more naive, slightly more constrained Reacher. So it's fun. People like it. They were asking for more, and ultimately our job is to give people what they want. So we decided to give it a shot.
Liza saying she loves prequels. Like, Liza, thanks for jumping into the conversation. Andrew, I'm fascinated to learn that you read, listen, input, and then implement reader suggestions. What about the flip side of that? What if someone says, I don't like you doing that? Do you read the negative reviews? Do you listen to people who say, I want you to stay away from this direction, I want you to go this way? How do you implement that as a creative?
Yeah, I mean, we try to listen to everybody's opinion, and as you say, the problem you get is if there are conflicting opinions, because in that situation you can't keep everybody happy. So what we try to do is look at the majority view, and most people. I don't like, particularly with prequels. Prequels are safe ground because I don't recall really anybody saying, "Oh my God, I hate it when he's back in the army." It's almost universally popular, so it was a pretty safe thing. And I think that actually, just in the context of the Reacher books in particular, the prequels are really interesting because Lee made a decision right at the beginning that he didn't want the character of Reacher to change. We know Reacher, we love Reacher. It's almost a contract. If you go out and you buy the next Reacher book, you know who you're going to be reading about. He's not going to have become a tree hugger. He's not going to suddenly be a vegan who, spends his whole time meditating. You know what you're going to get from Reacher. So that kind of character development that you often see over a long series is different with Reacher. We want to show him learning and growing a little bit, and we show him different sides of him, different angles, different experiences, but he's not going to fundamentally change. So if you think about it, the prequels that we do, it's like character development, but in reverse, because what you're seeing is a younger Reacher with less experience who is perhaps less cynical at this point. So it's the closest we go to character development, but it's backwards because it's where you're rewinding time rather than showing him aging and progressing and changing that way.
As someone who also wants to write a prequel, Andrew, was it hard to keep it in mind? He wouldn't have the maturity, the wound, the whatever the character development would be, where he's a younger, less confident, also whatever younger includes, maybe more fearless, less mature, less thoughtful, whatever. How did you mentally work backwards on that?
Yeah, and it is a harder thing to do than it would appear, because there is so much that you have to take into account, because you've got certain. For me anyway, I kind of went through almost like an mental exercise, where I was thinking, well, what is not going to change? Reacher will still be just as determined to always do the right thing. He's going to be just as unconcerned about, is there a personal price to pay? He will still bring the bad guys down, come what may. He still has that thing that is hardwired into him, that if someone has done something wrong, someone has hurt the little guy, Reacher is just obliged to put that right. That isn't going to change.
Right.
Then you've got, he's investigating as a military policeman. How experienced was he at this point? How good was he at it? Had he learned anything yet? So that had to be figured out. And like you say, there are certain things that are, even though obviously this is fiction, but things that we regard as fact, like when did he get which kind of scar? What kind of injuries had he?
Exactly. Right. Remember, he hasn't had that injury yet. Remember, he hasn't. Right.
Yeah. And then, other than that, it's just the problem that 92 is not all that historical, but it's still in the past. Technology has changed, things.
Right.
So we had to be careful about, what tools would be available. Obviously, no one's got a handheld cell phone at this point. What kind of cars were there? We had a scene where it was necessary for him or someone to make a phone call at the end of the scene. So nowadays you might put that anywhere you want because anybody can make a phone call from anywhere. But back then it would be somewhere that would have a landline. So why would it have had a landline? What kind of buildings that are kind of remote and obscure would have a landline? So things like that go into the thought process. And even beyond that, because we had the 92 timeline and then the 69 timeline, we have a number of very important female characters in this book. And, we were conscious that the opportunities that would be available would be different in, say, 1960. If you were a well-educated, intelligent, professional woman coming of age in the mid-60s, there would be the opportunities open would be different to the ones in 92 and then even now. So, we had to think about that because it has to seem plausible that a particular person would be in a particular role or doing a particular job. So there was a lot. And really, I guess I anticipated some of it when we said, yeah, let's do the prequel. But I by no means had anticipated all of these potential pitfalls and all of these things. And this book was actually probably of the four we've done together so far, probably the hardest to write. And I think it was that. I think it was that, when you're writing, I'm sure you feel the same. What you're looking for is forward momentum. You want to get that snowball rolling down the hill. And because we had to keep, well, I anyway, Lee perhaps had a better grasp on it, but, I felt that I had to keep stopping to check, well, what could have been done in 92? What equipment would they have had in 69? What, even catchphrases, language, slang, jargon, all of these things are different. So it was sort of thing where there was far more detail that needed to be checked up on and verified. So it was a tough one to write, honestly, but very fun, very rewarding. But it was a challenge.
It is a challenge. I just wrote a book that took place in 1923 and that's 100 years ago. And I found myself facing all of those same challenges. Did they have telephones? Okay. It's so many things that you take for granted, whether it's sayings or cultural references, whether you're being funny or in passing or whatever, you don't have that same cultural moment. So, or be able to reference, like I found myself saying something like, okay, Einstein. Oh, wait, Einstein was alive in 1923, but he wasn't Einstein as we know him. You can't make the kind of reference. And same with, I was surfing, I was looking for antique jewelry the other day and I found a piece of 1990 jewelry that was listed as an antique. I was like, I beg your good pardon. So you're writing technically historical in 1992, which is very bizarre to think of.
Very bizarre. I know exactly what you mean. I remember being taken on a school trip once to a museum in York, England, and it was quite a famous museum, and it was the place where they had all kinds of cultural artifacts rather than stuff dug up in fields, hundreds of years ago. And stuff like toys I had as a kid were in there. I think it really makes you kind of sit up and take notice, doesn't it? When you're thinking, what are you talking about? That's part of my life. How can that be history? But sometimes
it's offensive, isn't it? Hurts, Andrew, hurts real bad.
Thinking, this is just sort of, this hadn't really occurred to me until you asked these questions. So, thank you for making me think about this. But, there's an element, we're talking about writing today about stuff that happened in the past and how different it is. And there's, I'm thinking of that line from that LP Hartley book, the past is a foreign country, and, Lee and I are from a foreign country. And so, there's a way in which anything we write that is set in the United States, we have to be checking ourselves, because phrases that were common in the culture that we grew up in might not be the same. Cultural mores, things that would be completely unacceptable in the UK but totally normal in the US. We have to get used to that. So it's perhaps an extension of that same kind of consciousness that we have to have.
Exactly. You make a reference to a TV show or a cereal or some a thing that only people in that culture would know. It's so true. New York Times bestselling author Danielle Trussoni is in the audience. Pulitzer jurist there. She said she's laughing out loud at the idea of Jack Reacher being a tree hugging vegan. We're all laughing with you on that, Danielle. Andrew, Leisha wants to know, who was your hardest character to write about, and why was that?
Yeah, gosh, what a great question. The thing with Reacher, one of the things that we really enjoy is the cast of supporting characters, because, obviously because Reacher roams around, with the exception of, say, Francis Neagley from his army days, who recurs, that there are really no recurring characters. And that means that I guess one of the challenges of writing these books is that every time you start a new Reacher book, you need an entire new cast of characters. You can't, bring out kind of, one of your old friends, as it were, and, wind them up and set them going, doing things that you've already established they can do, because they don't exist. You have to start again. And so I guess if I can just expand the question just very slightly, probably the hardest characters to write about are the villains, the ultimate villain, not perhaps the henchman villains, but the person who is ultimately responsible. And the reason I would say they were the hardest, they're perhaps also the most fun, but they're the hardest because you have to make sure that they are absolutely credible and plausible as adversaries for Reacher, because we all know Reacher is huge, Reacher is strong, Reacher can beat anybody up, he can solve any puzzle, he knows all about weapons and tactics and all of these things. So anyone who is going to be a worthwhile enemy has to be super capable. So perhaps the thing that makes it hardest is the challenge of coming up each time with an adversary who is doing something pretty interesting, because who wants a boring villain? I forget who. It's been attributed to about half a dozen different people, but I remember reading about someone that was arrested for robbing a bank, and he was asked, "Why did you rob the bank?" And he said, "Well, that's where the money is." That is an interesting motive. You've got to have a motive that's interesting. And what we try to do, we came up years ago, because even though I've only been writing with Lee for the last 4 years, for the last getting on towards 30 years, we have spent all our spare time sitting around talking about Reacher like he's an imaginary brother in the room. What would Reacher do about this? What would Reacher do about that? So we've been very conscious of a lot of details that go into the book. And one of the things is what we call villain inflation. Because, imagine you're writing a book and you have the bad guy plotting to explode a nuclear bomb in Manhattan, right? What do you do in book 2? Does the villain have 2 nuclear bombs in Los Angeles? Then is there 4 nuclear bombs in Washington? You can't keep going with that if what you're focusing on is the kind of extreme lengths that these people are going to. You have to have them doing something interesting and devious that people think, oh, even though it might be morally objectionable, you might think, oh, it's kind of cool that he's thought of that, But what you have to do, what I think you have to do, is give that villain something, a characteristic that is so personal and so recognizable that, something that you'll recognize from everyday life, a bullying boss at work, or just an obnoxious thug on the subway, somebody that you will recognize in some way from your own life, and somebody that when you come across them on the page, you just cannot wait for the bit where Reacher is going to bring them down to size. So I think that it's not one specific character, but just the idea of making sure that you're getting the villain right, I think is the hardest and the most important part of
Ooh,
on one of these.
what a thoughtful answer, Andrew. Thank you so much. And Leecha saying thank you for answering her question. Leecha, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Uh,
seriously, thank you for asking, because we can't give good answers if you don't ask good questions. So thank you.
Oh, so lovely. New York Times bestselling author Danielle Trussoni watching from YouTube says, "Oh my God, I love your hat." First of all, thank you for noticing, Danielle. This is my Halloween costume. I am on the case sussing out the best in crime fiction today for Halloween. And she says she would like to know how your collaboration works technically. Now, this is from a Pulitzer jurist and New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. Danielle Trussoni, most recently of The Puzzle Master, a brilliant, beautiful, powerful, poignant book that I absolutely loved and interviewed her for earlier this year. She says, do you outline? Does one person write a draft and then the other edit? And how long does this process take?
Well, those are great questions. Thank you, Danielle. And I'm glad that you're asking now that we've actually got a few books under our belt, because when Lee asked me if I was interested in working with him and keeping the Reacher series going, we decided, yeah, let's do it. But the problem was we actually had no idea how we were going to do it, because neither of us were really known for playing well with others. So it was a massive question mark hanging over, we know what we want to do, but how on earth are we going to do it? And
Yeah.
so we had to figure it out as we went. And actually, we had to figure it out twice, because we started, Lee has this tradition that, some of you might know about, that he always likes to start on the new Reacher on September the 1st. Because way back when he started writing Killing Floor, the first Reacher book, he got fired from his job on August 31st. So September 1st, he went out and bought lots of paper, a pencil, and sat down to start writing. So September the 1st is the day. So we sat down on September 1st, and we both live in Wyoming, about 3 miles apart. So that's we're next but one neighbors, basically. And the way our house is, it's set into a hill. So my office is in the basement, but that leads out into, onto the deck. So he can just come into my office. We can just, start working immediately, no messing about. And so in the beginning, it was really lovely, because we would be together at my place and we would talk everything through, because you mentioned outlining, and Lee is absolutely 100% implacably opposed to outlining. He will not do it. And somebody once kind of made out that he doesn't plan anything. And what I've noticed working closely with him is that it's not that he doesn't plan, it's that he doesn't plan everything in one go up front. I call it more like distributed planning. So what he'll do is he'll think very carefully about the scene that's in front of him. So, take the beginning, take the opening scene, in some ways the most important scene in the book. A lot of thought and planning goes into that one scene. But then when that scene is finished, it could be very short, it could be a very short scene. It could be a snapshot. And when that is done, then he thinks about what is going to happen in the next scene. You do that, what is going to happen in the next scene? And I got quite a shock, actually, when we were doing that first book together, The Sentinel, because we did get to the end of the first scene. And I kind of secretly suspected that he maybe knew a little bit more about what was coming than he ever let on. But we got to the end of that first scene, and I said, right, what happens next? And he said, well, I don't know. we had to figure it out. And so we don't outline, but we would talk about, what happens next? Why? What is Reacher going to do? What are the bad guys going to do? And a lot of that comes from a sort of instinct that you develop over the years, from all of the books you've read, all of the TV that you've watched, all of the movies, about pace. Pace is really important. We really believe that, you always hear in terms of praising thrillers that a book is really fast paced. And what what we believe is that if you want parts of the book to seem fast, what that means is that you've also got to have parts that are slow. Because if you don't have both, if everything is fast, really nothing is fast because it's all the same. You have to be able to judge when to be slow, when to be quiet, when to be fast, and when to be loud. So that kind of comes from, that's an instinctive thing. We may be right or we may be wrong about that, but we don't sit down and say, okay, well, in 3 pages time, this needs to happen. It's just we let it unfold. And that was really, really lovely when we, in those first 2-3 months writing the Sentinel, because if you think about it, you're getting to do a job that you love and you get to do it with your brother. Doesn't get better than that. But then the pandemic struck. We worked up until Christmas. We went off and did some stuff, and then the pandemic came. We'd been traveling, so we were stuck. We couldn't get back together physically, so we had to switch to a new model where essentially we would talk about stuff on the phone, and then I would write stuff down, and then we would email the document back and forth. And it was much less fun because it's lovely getting to sit around and chat, because then you can talk about the football and everything else at the same time. But the thing is that what we realized, the downside of that is, I'm sure, if any of you have collaborated with other people, if you show the other person what you've written, you cannot help yourself. You're going to say, so this is what I've done, and this is how it links to what we just did yesterday, and this is what I think is important, and this is where I think it's going to go, and this is how we can connect. You can't help it. You're going to say those things. And once the other person has heard them, they can't read that passage or that chapter or that scene dispassionately because they have heard those words. They can't unhear them. And if someone goes to the library and borrows the book, or they go to the bookshop and buy it, they're not going to have you whispering in their ear, are they? They're just going to have the words on the page. And those words are either good enough or they're not. And so when we started just emailing the manuscript back and forth, that's what we found. All we had was the words on the page. And if they weren't good enough and they needed to be improved, we could see that much more quickly than we had been doing, and talking about everything. So even though it was less enjoyable in terms of us having fun, making up stories about Reacher, in terms of producing the best book that we could possibly produce, it actually helped us to come up with what we think is a better book in a shorter period of time. So that was where we got to. And Lee, I think he does like to look at it that he's more in a kind of supervisory role. He never enjoyed the typing part. So the fact that he's got someone else that can be glued to the computer, I think is fine. But in terms of figuring out who does what and why, that part, it's just really fun to do together.
So do you both draft and you both edit?
It's more of me drafting, and then we work on the edits together.
And has it ever devolved into a screaming match, a wrestling match, a coffee throwing, he stomps out and leaves your ranch fight, or no?
I'd love to be able to say yeah, because it would make for a great story. But the honest truth, even though it's kind of boring, is that no, it never has. Because I think there were a couple of times in the beginning where I think he was a little wary, because he's the big brother, he's the one who started all of this, and he was worried, I think, honestly, that I might be too deferential, because I wouldn't want to say to my big brother, no, that's rubbish, get rid of it. But the thing is, this is work, isn't it? This isn't just sitting around and having fun. It's important and it's serious. And so pretty quickly, when we were working on that first book, you realize, no, if there was something I didn't like, I was going to say to him, no, that isn't working. We need to. And a couple of times, I think it was a kind of mixed feeling for him, because on the one hand, he felt a little bit, well, wait a minute, little brother, what are you doing? But at the same time, he thought, no, this is actually exactly what we need, because the whole point is we're trying to come up with the best book we can possibly write. And that's the only way you can do it. You can't, you know yourself, if you show somebody your work, if they don't like it but they tell you that it's fine anyway, that's not helping you, is it? You need that honest feedback, and that's what we were giving each other. Maybe a little directly, maybe a little raw, maybe in the early days a couple of jangled nerves, but we kept going with it, and it turned out to be really valuable.
Oh my gosh. Robin wants to know, Wyoming, did he ride his horse over to your ranch?
Well, that's a great question. I love it. And, where we live, pretty much everybody apart from us has horses. But, we always say I only do anyway. The only horses that we're really interested in are the ones under the hood of our cars. So he certainly didn't. He would always drive over. I did once ride a horse. It was in Scotland in 1978. And it didn't end well for me or the horse, and I was never moved to try it again. So, with apologies to all my Wyoming neighbors, no, I'm neither of us really are kind of feel drawn to getting in the saddle.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Sophie Ann, joining us from YouTube, wants to know, where did the character of Jack Reacher come from? Who or what inspired the creation of this fictional character? Did it come from a fictional or non-fictional one?
Well, that is a great question, because Reacher is such a great character, isn't he? And I think that there were numerous. There were a few different strands of inspiration that combined. One of them was really very personal, because there's an expression out there that you should write what you know. Well, Lee and I both we think that's no good. We think what you should do is write. You should write how you feel, right? Ooh. And so when the event that led him to sit down and start writing about Reacher was that he got fired from his job. He was working in television in the UK. He was working for a company that had been absolutely incredible in terms of the shows that it produced, but it had got onto a really bad path due to the management that was involved. And he was incredibly well trained, incredibly specialized, but in one very narrow field. So all of a sudden, he went from being this useful, valued person who could contribute to somebody who was basically told, no, we don't want you anymore, get lost. And so he was cast aside with all of these highly honed skills, but which were absolutely useless in normal life. You could almost say in civilian life, right? So he was looking for a character who could potentially be in those same kind of circumstances. Once valued, very highly skilled in a very narrow area, now no longer wanted. And what he hit on was that at the end of the Cold War, the US Army downsized dramatically, and a lot of people who were very highly trained in a very narrow area was suddenly cast aside and no longer wanted. And what he was really doing was taking that feeling that he had of bitterness, of anger, of betrayal, about suddenly being unwanted and unneeded. And so Reacher is a perfect vessel for that, because his circumstances were the same. So that was, I think, a big driving force. Then he added to that some practical things, because if you're going to write a character that does the kind of things that happen in crime fiction, you need to establish how come they can fight, and how come they know about guns, and how come they know how to investigate crimes, and how they have this knowledge of human nature. So that all came from the military police side. The army could explain 80% of Reacher's skill set, but particularly because Lee has always loved, Sherlock Holmes, all of the, the classic detectives. He always loved those. So he wanted there to be that element of investigative capability. So that came from being a military policeman rather than any other form of soldier. And then I guess the whole thing really is part of, if you look at it, Reacher is really the kind of 21st century version of the knight errant, the person who, throughout the history of human storytelling, there's always been this tradition. Every continent, every culture has had it, where you'll have the lone stranger comes into town. There's a big problem in the town. The stranger fixes that problem, and then critically he leaves. And so Reacher fulfills all of those functions. But I guess the driving force was that sense of anger and bitterness that Lee had, having been, whatever he was useful to the company, he was fine. As soon as they thought they didn't need him anymore, out the door. Never mind how you pay your mortgage and how you're going to feed your family. You're no longer good on our bottom line, so out you go. So I think that if you combine all of those things together, that's what gives you Reacher. But probably the key aspect there is that feeling that he had when he got stabbed in the back.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I have interviewed you guys 3 times and I did not know that. And as someone who has been laid off in my corporate career twice, it is it's exactly what you said. It's this feeling of betrayal. I've given you so much, my time, my energy. I've stayed late. I've worked hard. I've sacrificed personal gatherings, family events to be here for this company. And then as soon as you're no longer needed, it's adios. And it's this terrible feeling of resentment and betrayal. And that makes so much sense. I feel like I'm going to read Reacher with a whole new lens now. Thank you for that, Andrew. This is so fascinating. Y'all, the book is out now. The Secret is out now with incredible rave reviews from the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, Patricia Cornwell, James Patterson. I mean, it just goes on and on. You will want to get your hands on this copy. So no matter where you're watching from, on Facebook or YouTube, get your hands on The Secret, and you will immerse yourself in number 28 of the Jack Reacher series. You won't want to miss this one. Tina wants to know, do you narrate the books? I'm a sucker for accents when having books read.
Well, that's a great question. And, in a way I would like to, because, I years and years and years ago, my start in life after university was theatre. So I would love to. But problem is, in terms of the Reacher books, I kind of have the wrong accent, and so I don't think I could really do a convincing job. So much as I would love to, I think that it's better off, the people who do narrate audiobooks, audiobook narrators in general, but particularly the ones who do Reacher, they are experts in their field. They're the professionals, and even though I would like it, I think that everybody else, certainly everybody who likes to listen to audiobooks, I think they'll be a lot happier if we leave it to the people who really know what they're doing.
Andrew, I think you could do it. You could do an American accent. You know what we should have done? I should have done this interview with a British accent. You should have done with an American accent. Let's do it next year. I think we're both up to the theatrical challenge. Are you on board?
I am on board.
Okay, you guys, every year I interview the children, the 2 childs, for a Halloween extravaganza. So next year I've cast the gauntlet. Andrew has accepted. He's doing an American accent. I'm doing a British accent. You are not going to want to miss this one. Y'all, we are out of time. Time flies when you're having so much fun. Let's take one last question. This one from Liza. She wants to know, is there anything about the film or TV series that you wish they had done differently? Great question.
Great question. Yeah, because it's really amazing when I've always been fascinated by the transition between a book and then another medium like TV or the movies. And I think that my biggest hesitation about the movies really is that if you look at a book like Reacher book, it's quite long in terms of a typical thriller. And there's an awful lot of detail, that Reacher, particularly when he's solving the problems, people often will say that their favorite thing is thinking along with Reacher as he solves the problems. And, it's like an onion peeling back layer by layer. Initially, it seems insolvable, but once Reacher methodically works his way through, it's so satisfying to do that with him. And then the result is kind of simultaneously surprising because you would never have anticipated it at the beginning. But also there's a sense of inevitability because he walks you through step by step. You can do that in the book. You can do that in streaming television because you have, what is it, 8 episodes or something to include every step and every detail and every nuance. But the movies, the meat of the movie is about 90 minutes long, and that is simply too short to do justice to everything Reacher does. So instead of seeing Reacher go through 20 steps to reach an answer, you see him just kind of fall onto it. And to me, that was the least satisfying aspect. So I wish there had been a way to avoid, falling into that trap. But the books already have to be shortened so much to fit the format of a movie. That's what was left. So that was the thing I was least happy with.
Andrew, that's such a great point, and I never thought of it that way. And you're so right. And for me, who loves details and who loves to, as you said, think through it with the character, that's the fun of it for me. That's why I love those extended TV series, because I can really get down into it and work through it together. And you're so right. That the format necessarily of a 2-hour movie doesn't let you play detective or whatever. That's such a great point. Thank you for that. That's really thoughtful and so true. Y'all, the book is out now. Patricia Cornwell raving. I pick up Jack Reacher when I'm in the mood for someone big to solve my problems. I'm a fan, raves James Patterson. NPR says the Reacher novels are easily the best thriller series going. I don't think we should tell James Patterson that. I'll keep it secret, so he'll give you when you go to ask for that next blurb. But this book is so good, you guys. The Secret is out now. Grab your copy from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. You're not going to want to miss The Secret. Y'all, that is a wrap on our pre-Halloween extravaganza with Lee and Andrew. Lee ducking out early. Andrew jumping into the saddle, saving the day. Jumping behind the wheel, I should say. Saving the day. Lee just says she can't wait to read it. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back at the top of the hour with Tess Gerritsen. Go get a drink, get a snack, and I will see you then. Andrew Child, it is such a pleasure to interview you. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your answers. Thank you for your time, for staying up late. Andrew's in London, y'all. It is late, and he stayed up late to talk with us. You're the best, Andrew. Thank you so much. Daniel saying Andrew is the true hero. Yes, Daniel, Andrew's the true hero. The mystery user saying thank you so much, and hello from Canada. Tina saying thank you. Andrew, Liza saying thank you both. So many comments just pouring in, y'all. Thank you for joining us, and I will be back at the top of the hour. Stay tuned until then.
Thank you so much.